Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Ichigo saved Naruto world and married Kushina? Before I start, please do support for more awesome content, and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow TheLivingMyth for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story. Link in the description. When did my life began to get better? Was it when I became a Shinigami, or first stepped into Soul Society? Was it when I first came into this world so much different than my own? Or was it when I defeated my greatest enemy I could ever think of? It doesn't matter anymore. All that matters is that, in the end, he managed to protect them all. My name is Kurosaki Ichigo, and this is my story. Minato stood as he clutched his son, Naruto, upon his chest. He glared at the giant fox that stood in its massive glory, the way it glared down at him as if he was sucking his soul out by his gaze alone. But today wasn't the demon's day. For it was now time for him to be sealed once more, but at the cost of using his son. The one he regretted on doing the most out of all. He remembered how this day slowly began to change into a nightmare they never wished could exist. It all happened too fast for him. He was just with his wife Kushina as she passed through labor. Then all of a sudden, a masked man came and took his son, his Naruto. He remembered it as if it was a few seconds ago. How the intruder threw his child in the air carelessly, attempting to kill him with a kunai. However, he managed to save him before it could happen, only for his wife to be kidnapped instead. After that terrible loss, he went out in search for her, taking his son with him with the risk of him being put in harm's way. He remembered thinking to himself that if he and Kushina were meant to die here, in this cold night, then he won't allow her to die without holding their child just once, to feel him as he snuggled into her chest for warmth and protection a mother always has. He remembered finding Kushina chained up with the Kyuubi released from the seal, unleashing its wrath upon his village, his home. The place he swore to protect to the best of his ability as Hokage. How he remembered battling that masked man and barely besting him in the end of their battle. How he saw the tears flow from her wife's eyes. Those tears that shattered him into so many pieces that he could never hope to collect them again. No, that's why he had to do this. With his wife being unconscious about a mile distance away from them as she couldn't stay awake. After all, she just passed through labor and just had the Kyuubi extracted from her body. So it was no surprise that she was asleep. Minato chuckled as he gazed down at Naruto for what may be the last time in his life. Sorry Naruto, I never thought that it would turn out like this. And if you grow up hating Mule, then I don't blame you for it. Probably you will understand when you are suddenly put in a position like this in the future. Minato sighed as tears began to build up in his eyes. I'm sorry that I couldn't say anything more father-like right now since, well, we're being glared at by a giant beast that's trying to kill me with his eyes. He lightly chuckled before he resumed talking. But yeah, take care of your mother and look out for her. She'll need you the most right now. Soya. I love you so very much. With that, he placed Naruto down on a small-looking carriage that was surrounded by 8 candles before performing a sealing jutsu. Shiki Fujin. With Ichigo, things weren't going as he thought they were. The last thing he remembered before waking up in this forest filled with trees that should probably not exist in Japan, was him unleashing his final attack, Nyujutsu, upon his opponent Aizen. And everything after that was just a white blank. So what was the first thing he did when he got up? Oh, I'll tell you. Where the hell am I? He screamed to the heavens above if they could ever hear him. He was about to start cutting and crushing the forest around him before he noticed something. A man laying next to a baby, his body not moving at all, which he assumed that he was either sleeping, or he was dead. Excuse me? Ichigo spoke as he made his way over to the two. When he didn't receive a reply, he continued his approach. Pretty soon he face-palmed himself for not thinking clearly. Why would I try to talk to them? He spoke to no one in particular. After all, they can't hear me, nor see me either. As if on cue, he heard the blonde man mutter something softly, but it was loud enough for him to hear. Can a man die in peace around here? Ichigo seemed startled for a second at the unexpected voice. Wait, you can hear and see me? Minato chuckled before replying. Well, I can hear you. He weakly turned his gaze to meet the man he was speaking with. Seeing you, however, is a bit blurry in my point of view. Probably because I'm slowly dying. He thought the last sentence to himself. Ichigo crossed his arms before nodding, accepting the answer he received. Well, I'm sorry to bother you, sir, but if can you tell me where I'm currently located, that'll be great. You're right outside the gates of Kanahagakure. Ichigo seemed puzzled. After all, he has never heard of a place called Kanahagakure in Japan before. I'm sorry, but I don't know what or where that place is, he replied while raising an eyebrow. Then tell me. Minato weakly spoke. Where is your home? I'm from Karakura town, which is located in Japan. Minato began to think, but it was cut off as he felt an unbearable pain flow throughout his body. He began to cough up blood, worrying Ichigo. Oh, are you alright? He spoke as he dropped to his knees next to the Minato. It seems that I don't have much time left. He cringed in pain as he coughed more blood. Time left for what? What's happening to you? Ichigo couldn't help but worry for the man he was speaking to, even if they just met a few minutes. No time for an explanation, he responded. I need to ask you a favor. Sure, fine, anything, he replied with concern. Now, I know that we don't know each other much, but you seem like a trustworthy and honest guy. He gulped before he finally spoke. I need you to look after my family for me. The villagers, they will treat my son as an outcast if they figure out what's inside him. Please keep him and my wife safe until they're well enough to take care of themselves. Ichigo wanted to decline. He has problems of his own right now for Kami's sake. He had to get home and check if his family and friends are safe, but something stopped him. It was as if his mind was saying that it's useless and impossible to get back now. But why? I promise. He suddenly replied, the words slipping out of his mouth before he can even think of them. Thank you? Minato spoke before he weakly turned his head to face his son, Naruto, who was still sleeping even after all of the commotion they went through. With that, he closed his eyes and let his aching body slowly shut down, forever and eternally putting him into a deep slumber. Ichigo sighed as he stood up, staring at the now unmoving corpse laying in front of him. I still have so many questions that hasn't been answered, he thought. Where the hell am I? But I guess that's a wait for now. He looked at Naruto before he picked him up. He hasn't told me either his or his child's names. Hopefully I can find his mother soon. With that, Ichigo left the area heading towards the village he remembered the man speaking about. He'll remember to inform any high-ranking member about the corpse. After all, no one deserves to be left rotting away in the open, no matter who or what they are. A few minutes later, after walking in the stand looking forest for a while, Ichigo found himself staring at a massive gate that was left opened and unprotected. At first, was about to question the poor security this village has, but then he soon spotted that there was countless of black smoke rising above the gates on the other side. The only option left in his head was that they were under attack recently, and the damage they received was unimaginable. Ichigo began to make his way towards the gates, and the closer he got, the more he began to hear. The anguishing cries that filled the air was unbearable to hear. He finally made past the gates, and the sight that greeted him was inconceivable. His entire vision was filled with villagers in tears as they cried over loved ones who were killed during the horrendous night. They were squashed, sliced, beheaded, stabbed, or any other terrible and unpleasant way to die. Oh my God! Ichigo muttered as he walked on. His stomach twisted as he felt that he was about to vomit any second now. A little girl was wandering around crying and calling out for her mother. What seemed to be the military of this village was desperately trying to control the situation, with countless of civilians yelling at them in fear and confusion at where their missing relatives or friends were. Yes, it was definitely a gruesome sight to take in. Ichigo quickly turned into an alley before planting his back on the wall. His breathing was heavy as a few drops of sweat slid down his face. He doesn't want to be here. The images that he saw was quickly compared to his home Karakura town. His heart began to beat faster as he thought about the situation back home, if it was fine or just as bad as the place he was currently standing in. I got to get this done fast, he thought to himself as began to quickly move across the streets, trying his best to ignore the pleading and desperate cries he received or heard. It came to a point where it just became too much. His ears were filled with replaying echoes in his head. It made him feel dizzy and just wanted to collapse and faint. A hand was placed on his shoulder which seemed to snap him out of his dizziness. Are you alright? A man with spiky gravity gray-colored hair spoke. He had a mask covering his face with what his headband covering his left eye. Ichigo nodded as he held his head. He soon realized that the grip he had around the child was very weak, so he pulled himself back together and tightened back his grip on the child. Good, come follow me. The man spoke as he began jogging, leading them away from all of the chaos. Where are we headed? He questioned as he kept a steady pace behind the man he was following. We're getting you out of this intoxicating area. The moment he said that, the cries began to grow softer before they weren't able to be heard anymore. We send our shinobi here when they get all confused and put under a lot of pressure to ease their minds before rejoining us. Ichigo had a puzzled expression at the mention of shinobi, but he decided not to question about it. Thanks, I really needed that. I know you did, you seemed like you were about to pass out any second. Ichigo chuckled at his statement before speaking. So I was kind of wondering where your hospital is located, or any type of medical center, since I'm actually new in town. Did you just arrive today? Yeah, I actually need to take my... Ichigo paused for a second as he glanced at the child he was holding. Little brother, to have a checkup. I'm afraid that he might have a fever. He lied. Sure. The man replied before gesturing down an alley. Take this street to the left, from there you keep walking until you pass 4 blocks and then take a right. You should see the building after you walk that path a few minutes. Thanks. Ichigo bowed slightly before taking off. He came to a stop as he remembered something important. Ichigo turned around, speaking with the man once more. Yes? Before I arrived here, there was a blonde guy just a few minutes south of here that died recently. He seemed to be part of this village, and I was wondering if you can go retrieve his corpse before any scavengers try to pick his body clean. The man took a second to think before nodding. Yeah, thanks for the information. I'll see if I can send a team to retrieve his body. Ichigo nodded before he turned and left the area. A few hours later, 3 p.m., hospital. Ichigo sat in a thinking position as he thought about his situation right now, the way the village looked, the sort of medieval-looking texture some of the buildings had, the clothing the citizens around here wore. But most of all, the location of this area. He finds it weird that this place has never been heard of in Japan, even though they speak Japanese. Which means they're somewhere located in Japan, right? Ichigo growled as he scratched his head in frustration. So many questions yet so little answers will be presented to him. He looked over at the nurse who was checking Naruto for any infections or injuries, and once in a while he found himself catching her staring at him. That is until she turned away with a noticeable blush on her face as she resumed her work. After a few more minutes the nurse finished up and reported to Ichigo that the baby is fine and healthy, but insisted that he wait for a doctor to show up and say the final word just in case she missed something. Ichigo nodded, accepting and following her request. He watched as she left towards the door and opens it, only to see that her expression turned into surprise at seeing someone standing at the other side. Hokage-sama? What are you doing here? The Hokage gave a small and caring smile before replying. I'm just here to ask your patient a few questions, that is all. The nurse nodded before stepping out of the way, allowing her to exit the room and close the door behind them in order to give them some privacy. Ichigo stared at the new person with curiosity. He seems rather old. But judging by the way the nurse reacted, he can only guess that he is the leader of this village or some type of high-ranking member. Can I help you? Ichigo spoke, breaking the silence between them. The Hokage nodded as he took a seat across from him. Yes, I believe that earlier today you informed one of my shinobi, Hatake Kakashi, about a deceased blonde male. Ichigo nodded in confirmation before he began to grow wary. If you think I'm the one that killed him, then you're looking at the wrong guy. No, I just wanted to ask you a few questions since that man you were last with was a very important person to us all. Ichigo raised an eyebrow in curiosity. And how important is this man? The Hokage sighed as he thought of the shortest way to explain this to him without staying in this room for a whole day. He was the previous Hokage of this village. Ichigo seemed confused, after hearing this Hokage a few times already, and wanted to know what that reputation is. Hokage? What is that? A Hokage is the leader of this village, but there are other Kages around the elemental nations such as the Tsuchikage, Kazekage, Reikage, and the Mizukage, which they all have and must lead their own village. Elemental nations? Kages? Just what the hell is going on here? Ichigo thought. But where is the elemental nations located at? Ichigo spoke, which managed to spike the Hokage's curiosity and confusion. Because the entire time I studied in school, I've never heard of any other nations, just the ones located in 7 continents such as Europe, North America, South America, Antarctica, Asia, Africa, and Australia, which is sometimes known as Oceania to some of the human population. Is it located in one of these 7 continents? Hiruzen hummed as he thought to himself, but soon he shook his head. I'm sorry, but I've never heard about any of these continents you mentioned. In fact, I'm pretty sure no one in the elemental nations knows about them. He looked at Ichigo with concern. Tell me, are you delusional? Did you have some type of drug affecting you that implanted some false memories? Ichigo's eye twitched. He wanted to yell and scream at the man in front of him for that comment. How dare he say that? Everything he's been through, his family, his friends, his home, all of that is real. He must be the one delusional here, along with this crazy dark-aged village he's in. He was about to start criticizing the old man, but something stopped him. No, it wasn't something, it was someone. It was them. Ichigo, calm down. The familiar voice of Zangetsu echoed through his head. Zangetsu? Ichigo replied in his head. What? How are you here? I thought you were gone after I used Nijutsu. I know, I thought I was gone as well. I still don't understand the full concept of why I'm here or how I survived, but that does not matter right now. Wait, but if you're here? Does that mean? Yup, still up and kicking king. I knew that you'd never forget me. The Hollow spoke with a smile. Well, I meant, is my Shinigami power still with me? The Hollow smiled, faded, replaced by an annoyed expression. Orange-haired bastard, he muttered to himself. Zangetsu soon replied after glancing at his roommate, well, more like soulmate, but in a non-gayish or romantic way. I believe so. If we're here, then that means that your powers are still with you. Zangetsu paused before resuming. But that's not important right now. I wasn't able to contact you for a while since your body was really exhausted. I didn't feel tired though. I know, it's the closest thing I can describe to you right now. It was your severe lack of Ryatsu in you that stopped me from contacting you. At first I thought that you were just exhausted and needed to rest, but after watching you get up and was about to unleash hell on that weird, unnatural-looking forest back there, I eliminated that thought out of my head. He sighed to himself for getting off point. But no, this is not the time for that. After studying and thinking about the new terrain we landed in, as well as the information we have received, my suspicions just may be true. But I'm not certain yet. Just keep talking to that man you're speaking with and try to get more information on the world he believes we're in. I'll inform you of the rest soon. With that, he cut the connection between the two, much to Ichigo's dismay. The Hokage coughed, bringing his attention back to him. Sorry, I was just thinking on your question. And no, I don't believe I am delusional. He spoke the word with anger yet confusion. Everything I've been through, all the pain and suffering, yet happy and cherishing moments, they were all just too real. So no, everything I've learned. I will not think for a second that I'm making this up, or that it's all inside my head. The Hokage stayed silent for a second before he made a quick motion of his finger, signaling for one of his bodyguards. In an instant, Ichigo saw someone appear kneeling in front of the Hokage wearing a mask. He would have been startled by this action, but he's seen people move twice as fast before. Yorichi. Bring me a copy of the world map, he muttered. Hi, Hokage-sama. He was gone not even a second later before he reappeared again carrying a large piece of paper. He handed it to the Hokage before he bowed and disappeared. I thought that we were talking in private, Ichigo questioned with narrowed eyes. We are, they can't hear anything we say. But they can see what we do. He handed the paper to Ichigo. This is the world map. Do you see any similar land mass in the paper? Ichigo scanned the unrecognizable paper through every inch. None of it was recognizable to him. No. He spoke softly as he handed it back. None of this seems familiar. And judging by the size of land described on this map, you guys should have been discovered a long time ago. He sighed to himself as his heart began to beat a bit faster. I don't like the looks of this. The Hokage nodded before he brought up a different subject. My apologies for changing the topic, but I need you to answer some questions of mine, since that was the sole purpose for me coming here. Sure. He nodded, wanting nothing more than to get his thoughts somewhere else. What do you want answered? The previous Hokage, Namake's Minato, did he say anything that may be any importance to our village? He told me to watch over his family until they are well enough to take care of themselves. Something about his child being treated as an outcast if his village found out about what's inside him. The Hokage nodded as he glanced towards the baby that was sleeping peacefully. So he's the new Jinchuriki for the Kyuubi no Kitsune, huh? He thought before he began to speak again. I see. Anything else he mentioned? I'm afraid not, he replied. I see. Thank you for your time, Ichigo. And if you wish to know, I know who and where the boy's mother is right now. Ichigo slightly straightened up at the information. You do? Yes, she's in this hospital as we speak. But I wouldn't bother her. She's really exhausted right now and has been asleep for a while. I don't think she'll get up anytime soon in the condition she's in unless someone wake her up themselves. Ichigo smiled in relief as he looked at the sleeping young child next to him before thinking to himself. Well, I know that the mother is alive, thankfully. I thought for a second the little one was going to be an orphan. He glanced back towards the Hokage with a thankful smile. I see. Thank you for telling me this, Mr. Hiruzen, Sarutobi Hiruzen. The now named Hiruzen smiled back. But you can just call me Sarutobi. I see. Well, thanks, Gigi, he replied, not bothering to use the man's name. The name's Kurosaki Ichigo. He spoke, before he remembered about Zangetsu and his supposed research on this terrain. So, any ideas on what's going on here, Zangetsu? Yes, quite a few to be exact. He sighed, knowing that all of his answers to this current situation will not please Ichigo, and he would possibly lose his mind and go ape shit. Then start to get depressed and cry a lot. Well, what do you got? And something about you sighing means that I'm definitely not going to like this. That's because you won't. Now, Ichigo. What I'm going to say may not be true at all, but it's the only possibilities I can think of. He paused for a second before continuing. After everything I've gathered, how that man Minato didn't know anything about Japan or the 7 continents, and the way this village is constructed, the texture, the places we've never heard about. Just say it already. Ichigo's eyes twitched in annoyance. The Hollow jumped in the conversation, seeing that it was taking longer than it needs to. He's saying that we're either in a different dimension, planet, galaxy, or we've done the impossible and gone back in time. Yada yada yada. There, now don't you dare go ape shit on us. Ichigo stayed silent, his whole body not knowing how he should react right now. It seemed like he is on shutdown. It came to a point where he had to leave the area for a while to think for himself. To let himself know what's happening, that the worst is standing right in front of him. Say, can you watch him for me while I'm gone? Ichigo spoke, gesturing towards the child, trying to act normal throughout the whole time. Staying in this hospital for hours is really making me go insane. Well, if that's okay with you, that is. You are the leader of this village, and you do have responsibilities. Hiruzen waved his hand side to side. It's alright, I'm free for a few hours actually. Go on ahead, I'll keep an eye on him. Thank you. He made his way to the door, but before he could open it, Hiruzen called out to him. Oh, and Ichigo. Ichigo turned towards the old man with a raised eyebrow, until he caught a small pouch with one hand. Get yourself something to eat, you look like you need a break. Ichigo smiled and nodded before he exited the door, and soon the hospital. When he left the building, he wanted to scream. He wanted to scream so loud that the entire world could hear his desperate cries, that he can't take this nonsense going on in his life. He had so many questions, but the main one was why? Why him? What did he do to deserve something like this? Is he not good enough? Is he a failure? How will his family take this? Are they searching for him right now without a clue on where he's at? Everyone he's known and love and rivals. Chad, Yuryu, Orihime, Rukia, Rinji, Yorichi, Urahara carry weight. Urahara! He thought with hope. He'll find me, it'll only be a matter of time, right? After all, that guy is damn smart if he say so himself. Zangetsu shook his head in pity for his user. If only it was that simple, he thought. A half an hour later. Ichigo walked down a surprisingly not too crowded street. After all, since what happened last night, he expected that the area would still be in a bit of a ruckus. He still continued to think to himself about how he was going to get home. And he's been thinking so much that he's beginning to think, what if he's never getting home? What if he's stuck here forever with no hope on seeing anyone again? He shook his head, getting rid of such thoughts. No, he will get home. No one is getting in his way for that. No one! And if they do, he'll cut them down where they stand before they can inflict any more damage. He would have continued his thinking, but someone bumped into him, preventing that from happening. Oof. He heard a female shriek as he saw the woman was falling down holding a child. Reacting quickly, he immediately caught her before she could touch the ground. Got you! He spoke as he pulled her up. Thanks. The woman replied with a smile. Sorry for that. I wasn't paying attention to where I was going, and well, you know what happened. Ichigo rubbed his head sheepishly. The woman giggled before she slightly shook her head. It's all right, I wasn't paying attention either. I was too caught up on taking care of my child. She glanced down at her baby with a warm and caring smile. They can really make things tough, but it's worth it in the end. Really? He smirked slightly at that. I can't see that. He looked at the cute-looking child. After all, they look so adorable. Just try taking care of one for a day. You'll see what I'm talking about. Say, once again, I'm really sorry for bumping into you like that, and for that I would like to buy you something to eat as an apology. No, you don't have to do that. I'm quite fine, all right. No, I insist. Come on, it doesn't have to be much. The woman sighed before she spoke up. You're not going to stop until I say yes, huh? Kinda, yeah. Alright then, but I would like to know the name of the gentleman that treats me to lunch. She spoke with a slightly flirtatious tone. I'm Kurosaki Ichigo, but please call me Ichigo. I'm Uchiha Mikoto. Nice to meet you, Ichigo. Likewise. A few minutes later, during lunch, the two sat at a table getting to know one another. And for Ichigo, he decided to gain an extra bonus to know more about this place and gain her trust. Well, more like respect. No way! Ichigo spoke with a smile. She did what? You heard me right. My friend Kushina is a really tough woman, if I say so myself. Mikoto replied. She was speaking about how he witnessed her friend take down a bunch of boys back in their academy days for calling her a tomato. Aha, well, I saw that coming, I guess. My mother told me to always treat women with respect, whether they're my age, older, or younger than me. He folded his arms with a faintly sad smile. Your mother sounds like a smart woman. She spoke as she gently moved her child from side to side. Ichigo couldn't help but become curious about the child. So what's his name? Mikoto raised her head in confusion. Excuse me? Your child's name? Mikoto looked down at her child with warm and caring eyes. His name's Sasuke. Sasuke, huh? Not a bad name for a little fella like you, huh? He said as he made googly eyes at him. But he should have realized that the baby was having its nap. Mikoto giggled at the childish act Ichigo was doing. I think that worked better if he was actually awake right now. Worth a shot, you know. He shrugged. So, I noticed that you were asking questions about this place. Are you new around town? Ichigo nodded in approval as he leaned back on his chair. Yes, I arrived here last night actually. Oh, so where are you from? She spoke with a slight interest. I'm from Kara. He stopped before he could finish, knowing that she wouldn't understand. I came from a small town down south. A few miles away from here. I see. Any family? Ichigo twitched at the thought of his family before he shook his head. No, they died when I was 9. He lied. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I shouldn't have. It's alright, you didn't know, so yeah. He shook his head before he stood up. Listen, Mikoto, it was nice to have you accompany me for a short while, but I just remembered something I forgot to do. He placed the pouch that Hiruzen gave him on the counter, not bothering to count the correct amount. Bye. Mikoto watched as Ichigo left the area with a confused and concerned expression before pouting. And he was actually kind of handsome. She shook her head as she began to scold herself. No, Mikoto, you're a happily married woman with 2 children to raise. She thought the word happily that didn't seem convincing to the human ear. Besides, he seems too young for me. Even though she spoke of many reasons why they can't be together, her heart won't let go of what it wants. And trust me when I say this. Her heart will get what it wants. Back at the hospital. Ichigo entered the room he left a while ago. Before he gazed around the room, he noticed that the room was empty with either the baby, nor the Hokage in it. With a confused and slightly worried expression, he exited the room and began to fast walk away, searching for the nearest nurse or doctor. "Excuse me?" Ichigo spoke as he spotted a nurse not too far away from him. "Yes? How can I help you?" The nurse smiled before nodding. Yes, Hokage-sama left for a council meeting after the child was checked on. He decided to drop him off with his mother before he left. Ichigo's expression was a wave of relief over his shoulders as he sighed. "Thank you, if you don't mind me asking. Can you tell me where the mother is located?" "Of course, she's on the 4th floor, just 2 more floors above this one. Her room's located at the end of the hallway, second to last door. But I suggest that you don't go in right now, the mother is really exhausted and needs her rest." Ichigo nodded before assuring her that he'll be quiet. "Don't worry, I'll be extra quiet when I enter. I just want to see if the child's okay." The nurse nodded before waving at him as he walked away. "You seem like a good father." Ichigo almost tripped at the statement. "I am not his father and she's gone." He sighed before continuing. "Pfft, me a father? I'm only 16, why would I be a father at this age?" "Who knows, you might seem older to them," Zangetsu replied. "Yeah," the Hollow agreed. "After all, this world seems like it doesn't have much of an age restriction. So you're old enough to get drunk and get some puss." Ichigo cut off the link with an annoyed expression. "Perverted pale bastard," he grumbled. A short while later, Ichigo came upon the door. He got instructions, and with extra caution, he placed his hand on the doorknob before opening it as slowly and quietly as he possibly can. When the door was fully open, he made his way inside, making sure to keep his steps unheard. The room was darker than he expected it to be, so he decided to stand still until his vision adjusted to the dark. "I don't think I should be doing this," he thought. "I don't think so as well, you look like you're trying to rob or rape someone," the Hollow replied with a smirk. Ichigo spotted the child he was supposed to take care of sleeping on a small crib next to the window. He made his way over there before he crouched down and looked over the little gates of the crib to see the whiskered boy that he brought in with him. "He seems fine," he thought with a smile. "I guess I should go." He was cut off as he felt someone jump on his back. "What the hell?" he yelled. "Leave my Naruto alone, you kidnapper!" He heard a woman yelled in a protective and fearful tone. "Wait, you got it all." The woman attacker bit him on the head, which made him yelp in pain as he was tumbling around the room trying to get her off. "Ow!" He roared once more before he managed to get a grip on her and pulled her off. He was about to turn to face her, but before he could catch sight on the mother of Naruto, right? He saw a fist filled his vision as it made impact on his nose. Ichigo tumbled back a bit before he had enough of this. He heard the woman running towards him and he immediately crouched and picked her up with both arms before tossing her on the bed. He got on top of her before she could get up and pinned her there. "Get off!" the woman yelled before she began to scream. "Help! There's someone trying to take my baby!" "Shut up, will you? I'm not trying to do anything," Ichigo yelled. He couldn't fully picture her face since it was still dark in the room, but he managed to catch that she had long red hair that seems like it reaches her ankles, and he could tell that she has violet eyes. "I know how this goes. You're going to act all innocent to let my guard down, and then backstab me and run off with my child." "I'm not stupid." She began to rant of the many possibilities that he could do to her. Ichigo clenched his teeth as he shut his eyes hard for a second. "Shut up!" he yelled. "Don't compare me with those useless cowards." That seemed to get her to stop, but he could feel that she was still glaring at him, ready to take him down the moment he makes the slightest mistake. He didn't want this to continue any longer. They were already off in a bad start, and it doesn't have to be worse. "Are you Minato's wife?" He spoke a bit softly. "So what if I am? Why should I tell you?" Ichigo sighed before he began to speak. "I woke up somewhere near him, and when I did, he was already on his last few breaths." He felt her body twitch in his hands, and he could only guess that this is the first time she's hearing this. "Why, you don't mean?" "I'm sorry, but he's dead." He waited for her response, but he didn't get anything. That is until he began to hear soft sniffing. "Is she?" he thought with slightly wide eyes. His thoughts were confirmed as he began to hear her sob. Ichigo stayed still for a while, not knowing what to do. He slowly released her grip on her, thinking that she might be playing with him, and will jump at him any second. But it never came. He got off of her as she continued to cry. He wanted to do something to help her forget her pain, or at least soothe it a bit. So he decided to go with his instincts. He sat right next to her and began to stroke her hair gently. And much to his surprise, he felt her wrap her arms around his. This went on for a few minutes until everything became silent. Ichigo looked over at the woman who was crying on her arm and noticed that she fell asleep once more. She's probably still tired, he thought. He gently removed his hand from her grip and picked her up bridal style before he set her down on the bed. He tucked in the blanket that he tossed over her before he took a chair and placed it next to the window. Looking outside, he saw that it was already getting dark, and the sunset was about to fade away any second now. This is going to be a long night, he thought as he closed his eyes, allowing sleep to envelop him, not before muttering softly to himself. What the hell have I got myself into? Ichigo stirred as he felt the brightness of the sun punch his face through the window. Damn sun, can't let me sleep for a few more minutes, he groaned. He rubbed his eyes before opening them, only to fall out of his chair the moment he saw who was literally in front of his face. Kushina, who was inches away from touching nose with Ichigo, giggled at the unexpected reaction she bestowed upon the orange-haired Shinigami. She scooted back before sitting up straight, which gave off a feeling of someone that was not to be trifled with. Well, that's what Kushina wants them to think. After all, it can get quite amusing to watch as people try to act extra careful for what they say or do in front of her. Good morning. She spoke with care and happiness, but Ichigo caught on to the small amount of depression she held in her tone as well. She's taking this better than I thought, he thought to himself before standing up from the cold ground of the hospital. Good morning to you as well, MS. I'm Kushina, Uzumaki Kushina, she replied, a smile forming on her face. Ichigo sat back down on the chair before he spoke up again. Nice to meet you, Kushina. My name is Kurosaki Ichigo. And you may have not noticed earlier since you were unconscious, but I was the one who brought Naruto here. I see. She looked down, staring at her legs for a second before gazing back towards Ichigo. Did you? No, I didn't do anything to him. That's not what I meant, she instantly replied before looking back at her feet uncomfortably. Did you see his body? Ichigo inwardly sighed to himself. Yes, I did. I'm sorry for your loss. Wow, it doesn't feel good informing someone that their loved one is dead. In fact, it made him feel like shit for a second. The reason for that is because that information only damaged them, and where did that information came from that hurt that person? Yeah, you. Oh, she softly spoke. Hee whatever. This is bound to happen to all of us one day, right? She sadly chuckled, trying to hide the damaged expression she's displaying, but was failing in a few areas. Ichigo stood up before making his way over to Kushina. He sat next to her before placing a hand on her shoulder. It's alright, you don't have to hide your pain. I'll listen to what you're keeping inside. Kushina pulled her knees upon her chest before she slowly let her emotional side take over. After hearing what Ichigo said last night, she's been having nightmares. How she watched her husband, Minato, be cut down multiple times in front of her, while she lay helpless to do anything. The sounds of her baby crying didn't make things better for her. Why did he have to die? She sniffed as a few tears fell from her eyes. She allowed her head to lay on Ichigo's shoulder as he wrapped an arm around her. I don't know. That's just the way this cruel world works. You never know when you'll last see that one precious person until the day comes. He was too young. Out of all the time in the world, why did he have to die when our son was born? She began to sob once more, the wonderful things they were going to do together as a family, shattered. A knock on the door was heard before someone stepped in. The same person that Ichigo when he was headed to the hospital. The man stopped before he slowly backed up. I'll come back later. No. Ichigo cut him off. It's alright, Kushina needs all the comforting she can get right now. He nodded before making his way towards the two. Hey Kushina. The man spoke as sat he on the opposite side of her. I've heard what happened yesterday, and well, I'm sorry I couldn't be here sooner. Kushina rubbed her eyes before smiling. It's alright Kakashi, I just heard about it last night. Yeah, well, I'm just here to see how you're doing right now. He turned his attention towards Ichigo before speaking. Say, you're the one with the boy yesterday, right? How is he, by the way? Ichigo gestured over to the small crib not far from them. Take a look for yourself. Kakashi stood up before glancing over the crib to see the whiskered boy sleeping quietly as he first saw him. Has he ever woken up? No. Kushina spoke, her depression over Minato slowly lifting after the Naruto was mentioned, but still left a scar that could never be healed. Naruto-kun has never woken up since I could last remember. Naruto? Kakashi raised an eyebrow. Yes, me and Minato haven't told you yet, didn't we? Kushina smiled. He's our son. I gave birth to him yesterday. Kakashi felt like an electrical cord just shocked him, like something had refilled a missing part of him. And may I? He asked in slight hope. Go ahead. I don't mind. She nodded. Kakashi turned his gaze back to Naruto before he slowly and gently picked him up. His eyes glued onto his face as he felt the soft breathing of the child. A smile formed under his mask while a tear fell from his only exposed eye. He's beautiful, Kakashi complimented. Naruto squirmed slightly, showing that he's beginning to wake up, much to the three's excitement. As he opened his eyes for the first time, he first caught sight of Kakashi, who was still holding him. He has his father's eyes. He spoke before handing him over to Kushina to witness her baby take in his surroundings for the first time. Naruto stared into Kushina's violet eyes before his mouth opened with a smile as he extended his arms out. Well, look at that. Ichigo spoke. He knows that you're his mother. I guess it's a baby instinct, huh? Kakashi added as he and Ichigo gave each other a nod. Kushina stayed silent, ignoring the two that were talking as she kept her full attention on Naruto. The last and only memory that Minato left behind for her, and damn it, she will protect this last gift that she received. She doesn't care who it is, if anyone dares to try and take Naruto away from her. Then she'll make sure that person's bloodline never existed in the first place. Ichigo stared at the two with happiness and respect. That solves this problem. Now I'm just worrying about getting home, he thought. I suggest that you get comfortable in this place, Ichigo, Zangetsu spoke. We don't know how to return to where we came from. And I'm sure it would take a while before anyone is able to mark our location and come retrieve us. He paused as he sadly thought to himself. Well, that's if anyone is still trying to find us. Yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, Aizen should be taken care of anyways. After the beating I gave him before I appeared here, he'll be captured easily by any captain that comes across him. Zangetsu sighed as he continued to observe Ichigo's surroundings through his eyes. All we can do is wait and hope that they don't give up. Some time later. During the time the four were together, Kakashi gave a farewell before leaving to catch up with his duties. But not before he was told to keep Naruto's heritage a secret. He didn't need an explanation since he could already guess why. I guess we should be going now. Kushina spoke. Are you sure? I don't think you should try to stand right now. It's been a short time and you still need your rest. Ichigo suggested. I'm fine, just watch. Kushina spoke as she slowly tried to stand up. She managed to do it, but was unable to take even a step, for she stumbled and almost fell over. Luckily, Ichigo caught her before she can completely lose her balance. Kushina pouted as she turned away. Well, go on. She spoke. For what? Just say I told you so already. Ichigo chuckled as he helped her sit back on her bed. Nah, I would rather not. He spoke, which made her slightly confused. Tell you what, since you want to get out of here so badly, I'll help you out. How? She asked as she wondered what tricks he has up his sleeve. Just leave it to me, he replied as he stood up and walked out the door, leaving behind a curious Kushina with her child. A few minutes later, Ichigo walked back in the room, but bringing a wheelchair with him as well. Alright, get on, he requested as he went to grab Naruto, who was rolling around in his crib. When he gave Naruto to Kushina, he began to make his way down the hall before entering an elevator that brought them to the first floor. When they exited the elevator, they made their way to the main lobby where the exit was at. As they were getting closer to the exit, he heard someone call out to them. Hey! A nurse spoke, walking up to the three. Where are you going with our patient? Well, I'm his mother, I just want to get some fresh air. Kushina jumped in the conversation. Well, I'm sorry to say, but I can't allow you to leave without proper permission, the nurse replied. Even if your son is a stunning man to look at. Kushina was about to admit defeat and head back to her room, but an idea popped up in her head. Tell you what. A small smirk appeared on her face. If you let us go, I'll hook you up with my son here tonight. I appreciate your offer, but I still can't allow. He's 9 inches long with a diameter of 3. I'll see you tonight at 8 hot stuff. She then walked away with a flirtatious smile, giving a small sway on her hips. Ichigo stared at the retreating nurse before looking at Kushina. Was that necessary? No, not really. Now let's get out of here before anyone else tries to stop us, she suggested. Yes, mother. He playfully spoke as he chuckled. So how big are? That is unnecessary information. Half an hour later. The three made their way towards an apartment Kushina had owned in her younger days, and still does today. We're here. She spoke in relief at being someplace other than the hospital. She would head back to the house that she and Minato lived together. But after the unbearable information about her lover passing on, she just couldn't bring herself back to the place she once dreamed to raise their child. So let's just say she's trying to start anew. You sure? Ichigo asked, unconvinced by the looks of the place. It looks more like a house. Yes, I'm sure. Kushina replied as they made it towards the doorstep. My family had strong connections with Konoha, so I was provided with almost everything I needed. And trust me, I was surprised when I saw that this was mine as well. Ichigo nodded in understanding. Heck, glad there's no stairs. Or that would have been a problem, he muttered. As he opened the door, Kushina wheeled herself inside before shutting it behind her. Wow, he spoke in surprise. It seems like you got way more room than you needed. Yeah, too much actually. I never used 2 rooms, so I just made them guest rooms. She scratched her head as she had a gentle grip around Naruto, who was studying the new area they were in. Let's see, my room is the first room on the left. One of the rooms will become Naruto's when he gets older, but for now he'll sleep with me. But you can choose either the one at the back left or right. Ichigo raised an eyebrow as he turned to face her. Wait, I'm not actually staying here, right? I mean, we just barely met each other, don't you feel uncomfortable? Kushina chuckled as she shrugged. I can give many reasons on why you should stay here with us. You give a pretty valid reason, I'll admit. But I can feel that I can trust you. After all, you didn't try anything harmful to me or Naruto last night while we were the most vulnerable. Even when you helped me leave the hospital out of your own free will. She rubbed her arm as she turned her gaze towards the window located in their kitchen. But the thing I can tell about you the most is your eyes. They're filled with so much pain, yet you're able to smile a true smile. She turned back towards him before smiling brightly. So please stay with us. Ichigo stayed silent for a second as he thought about the 2 available decisions he had. He could either say no, and leave right now wishing them luck. But have no place to stay, much less how is he going to be able to feed himself or find a way back to his world without having someplace to welcome him back after a long day. Or he could just say yes. And that would make things much easier for him, to have a warm place to come back to after he gets a job to pay for whatever he needs. And that would help him get up and out of here faster. So in the end, the answer is pretty obvious. All right, he replied as he smiled lightly. I'll stay. Kushina perked up after hearing his reply. That's great. Also, you should smile more often, that scowl on your face seems to really scare some people, she pointed out. Ichigo chuckled as he thought to himself. Some things just never change. He turned to walk down the hall to see which room he'd like best. If you don't mind, I'll be checking out the rooms. Sure, I'll be in the kitchen if you need me, she replied as she set Naruto down somewhere safe and out of reach of any dangerous objects that might kill a baby. Ichigo picked out a random room without checking how they look. Well, home sweet home, I guess, he thought to himself. For now, at least. We might not want to get too connected with these people when we leave, or else it'll be a really tough decision to make, Zangetsu suggested. Yeah, Ichigo responded. No kidding. Too bad for that idea, for it'll only be a matter of months until they get too attached with these people, and that would be something that would change their lives. But will it be for the greater good? Or will it up their lives even more? We'll see. 5 years later. Yes, 5 years have passed since that fateful day the Kyuubi raged upon the village. 5 years it's been since the village lost their precious yondaime, and for one redhead, her thought to be lover for life. 5 years it's been since our orange-haired Shinigami fell into the shinobi world, where a Shinigami should be nowhere near. In a quiet room we find our main character sleeping in his trousers peacefully. That is until his alarm went off. Ichigo groaned before he lazily shut off the loud beeping from his counter. He yawned as he rose to a sitting position. "Good morning to me." He sarcastically spoke to no one in particular. Now 21 years old, he stood up allowing his full height to be displayed. Over the years he has grown to a height of 6 feet 3 inches, where he stopped growing as he finally reached his growing limit. He passed the height of his father by 2 inches, much to his pleasure. As he opened his drawer, he pulled out his Shinigami garments before throwing them over his almost nude body. He would have wore the common shinobi outfit, but let's just say that these made him move around better. Also because they're really comfy to be in. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, he's now part of Konoha's military, aka shinobi. For how he got himself into it, well, let's just say he had a bit of fun fighting some people who he's now in a very close friendship with. A few months later he was given a suggestion to join the ANBU for his amazing skills in fighting as well as stealth. People who described his stealth said that it was something entirely different, like he's managed to turn himself into something unrecognizable. This gave him extra bonus on his career as a shinobi. A year later he's been promoted to be an ANBU captain since his skills has been improving ever since. That day brought him to form a bond with 3 people that he could call family. As Ichigo exited his room, his sense of smell caught a very familiar smell of breakfast being prepared. He made his way towards the kitchen before his eyes caught sight of a very beautiful redhead roaming around the kitchen with a bright smile. "Good morning," he spoke, startling her. Kushina placed a hand on her chest as she leaned back in slight shock. "Oh my, don't scare me like that, Ichigo." Ichigo chuckled as he began to help her set up the table. "My bad, I didn't mean to do that." "Yeah, I know," she replied as she began to help out. "It's just you're so hard to sense, it's like you're not even real at all." "Yeah, well, my dad always told me to be prepared for anything, so I guess he taught me well if I'm really that hard to feel." "Your dad sounds like a great guy." "Yeah, he is." He smiled sadly as he remembered his family. How he nearly broke down when it's been so long since he's heard or seen them. He shook his head to get rid of such thoughts. "Say, where's Naruto?" Kushina sighed to herself. "He's still not awake yet? I thought I told him to get up." Ichigo smiled as he placed a hand on her shoulder. "Don't worry, I'll get him." "Thank you," she replied as he watched Ichigo leave around the corner. Ichigo came upon Naruto's room before he knocked twice on it. "Naruto, get up! You need to head over to the academy soon." He received silence in reply. After knocking once more, he opened the door, revealing a very messy 5-year-old's room. There was cloths everywhere as well as ramen cups. Ever since Naruto ate a bowl of ramen, he's been addicted to it ever since. And it doesn't help that Kushina also loves it as much as Naruto, but he's grateful that she can control herself to a certain extent. He saw Naruto laying in an awkward position on his bed as he slept soundly. Ichigo poked him, causing him to stir. "Naruto, come on. It's time to get up." Naruto groaned as he lazily spoke. 5 more minutes." Ichigo stood for a second before sighing. He exited the room before coming back with a cup of cold water in hand. He splashed it on Naruto, causing him to jump in shock. "CC cold." He shivered. "Oh great, you're finally up." Ichigo smiled. "Now hurry up and get dressed, we're going to head out in 10 minutes. And if you're not out by then, you're not getting anything to eat." He left the room, leaving a shivering Naruto. Ichigo re-entered the kitchen to see Kushina already finishing up with breakfast. "He's up." "That's great," she replied. She soon remembered something that was going to occupy her for a while. "And Ichigo?" "Yeah? Can you take Naruto to the academy? I'm meeting with the girls today for something important." "Sure, go on ahead. I'll take care of everything." "Thank you," she replied before leaving the kitchen, much to Ichigo's confusion. "Aren't you going to eat first?" Kushina glanced behind her before speaking. "I already ate before you guys were awake. So I'll just be getting a shower before heading out." He nodded in understanding before checking the time. 15 minutes till the academy starts. Looks like Naruto's going to be eating on the way. He sighed. A few seconds later Naruto appeared with an exhausted expression. He wore his white t-shirt with a red swirl in the middle with black shorts on. "You'll be eating on the way. We'll be late if we're not out of here now." Naruto nodded weakly before lifting his arms. "Carry me, I'm too tired." Ichigo stood for a while before sighing. "Alright, hop on." He spoke as he got on his knees, allowing Naruto to place his legs over his shoulders. With that, the two exited the building heading towards the academy. As they strolled down the streets of Konoha, the two began to make small talk with each other. "So, what do you plan to be when you grow up, Naruto?" Naruto grinned as stared at the Hokage monument in the distance. "I want to become Hokage. So that in the end no one will look down on me like some useless kid." "Oh yeah, and how will you get there?" "By training, of course." Naruto looked down at Ichigo with a smile. "The way every Hokage has done it before, working their butts off until they can't go on anymore. That's a fine dream you have. Keep it in mind and don't let anything that will falter you keep yourself from reaching that dream. There will be many trials ahead of you, trials that will make you doubt your strength. All you need to do is break through every one to reach your destination." Naruto nodded in understanding. "I'll make it, I'm sure of it, Dadabayo." Ichigo chuckled to himself, that is until his sight caught on to two familiar people ahead of him. "Oh, Itachi!" Itachi, who was giving his brother a ride to the academy as well, turned to see one of his closest friends that he knows he could trust with almost anything. "Ichigo." He spoke with a smile as he slightly waved at the two. "Say, why don't we walk together as we're headed the same direction?" Ichigo nodded, the suggestion he was going to make already spoken by Itachi. "Sure, I was going to say that anyways." As the two grown-ups were talking, Naruto and Sasuke were glaring at each other with a challenging aura around them. "Sasuke." Naruto spat. "Naruto." Sasuke replied in a similar way. Ichigo and Itachi stared at the two rivals with a small smile on their faces. "This never seems to get old." Ichigo chuckled. "Indeed." The now four continued their walk towards the academy. After that, it will be a free day for them to figure out what to do, since it's pretty much their day off after a few long months of A to S ranked missions they were taking. When they reached the front entrance that lead into the academy, Itachi and Ichigo allowed Sasuke and Naruto to get off of them before they ran towards their classes. "Bye, Nii-san!" Naruto yelled. Yup, ever since Ichigo could remember, he was called Nii-san by Naruto. Not that it bothered him or anything, it was actually quite surprising and heartwarming. It's been a long time since he heard his sisters call him that, if they're alive somewhere out there. But hearing that after so long made him ease his hidden pain easier. "See you later, Itachi ni," Sasuke called out with a huge smile. These moments are one of the rare moments you'll ever see Sasuke smile as bright as that. "See you later, Sasuke." Itachi spoke softly with a tone that didn't seem too happy. More like depressed. Ichigo raised an eyebrow at hearing the sudden change of mood in Itachi's tone. And being his friend, he couldn't help but become worried for him. As the two walked away from the academy, Ichigo decided to bring that up. "Itachi, are you alright?" Itachi turned his gaze to Ichigo with a confused expression. "Why do you say that?" Ichigo scratched the back of his neck as he sighed. "Well, back there in front of the academy you didn't sound too happy." "Well, not happy, more like as you always sound. You seemed depressed or worried for something." Itachi inwardly cursed himself for letting such an obvious slip-up be exposed. "Oh, it's just something that I couldn't get my mind off of. I just need to think it through first, I'll be fine," he lied. Ichigo caught on to his lie, but decided not to press on for more answers. If his friend doesn't feel like talking about it right now, then he'll wait until he's ready. "Alright then. Let me know when you want to talk about it. After all, we're friends, aren't we?" Itachi nodded, feeling relief wash over him as he inwardly thanked Ichigo for not pushing him to say anything. But then again, a part of him just wants to say everything right now, to get it all off of his chest and find help. "I have something to do, I'll see you later, Ichigo." He spoke before jumping on the rooftops away from his friend. "I wish I could tell you, but I have no doubt that they're listening on me right now. If I rat them out, then everything Konoha's fought so hard for will fall apart. We'll meet again, Ichigo. When we do, I'll be a much different man than what you know of today," Itachi thought as he continued jumping across the rooftops. Back with Ichigo. Our orange-haired Shinigami is currently walking around town, having nothing better to do than to just see what he can find new. His team, which consisted of Yugao, Itachi, and Kakashi are having their private time right now, leaving him with absolutely nothing to do. He remembered how they all first got into a team together, and heck, he's quite sure that they're the best four-man ANBU team out there. Quick and deadly, that's what they are, and the way they like it to be. He thought of trying to hang out with some others he's gotten in a friendly relationship with. Let's see, guy. No, he'll challenge him to do some crazy-ass workouts that'll leave him sore for weeks. Asuma? Nah, last time he did that he was trying to score a date with Kurenai, which kind of put him in a bad mood for a day or two. Anko? Nope, she's probably too busy torturing some poor bastard for information they probably don't need. After all, she just loves torturing people. Hana? Probably training her dogs. Kurenai? She's practicing on her genjutsu to make sure she stays sharp. Yup, he's out of options. Kushina is somewhere with Mikoto, Yoshino, and Sim doing whatever women do at their age. As he was walking and thought of all of this, he never realized that he bumped into someone on the way. Whoa! Ichigo heard. Since he was taller and more stronger, he was able to keep his balance before catching the person that was about to fall. Sorry about that. Ichigo nervously chuckled before thinking to himself. I really need to stop thinking while I'm walking. It's alright. Ichigo decided to take in the person's appearance as she regained her balance. It was a she, who seemed to have dark bluish hair with a Konoha's headband tied around her head. So she's a shinobi as well, he thought. He could also see that she has pupilless eyes that reminded him of a certain Hyuga clan. Other than that, she dressed in the common jonin outfit everyone wears. After taking in her appearance, he took notice that there was a few boxes laying scattered across the ground across them. I'm so sorry, here I'll help you. He spoke as he began to pick them up one by one. Thanks, but I can handle it myself though. I don't want to waste your time, she replied as she picked up 2 boxes. No, I insist. I have nothing else to do, so this won't be a bother to me. After a few seconds, she sighed before speaking. Okay then. Come on, follow me. Ichigo complied with her request and began to follow her down the road. So where are we headed? Back to my place, of course. Ichigo chuckled as he thought about heading over the Hyuga estate. Well, I can't enter the Hyuga estate sadly, so I'll just walk you to the gate. Oh, it's alright. I don't actually live in the Hyuga estate. Ichigo glanced at her with surprise. Really? I mean, it's just... Yeah, I know. I'm a Hyuga. And we usually stay in the clan or some shit like that. She chuckled before speaking. Well, I'm not like all of them. I actually left on my own. But they don't actually know about it. So keep that a secret, will ya? Ichigo nodded in understanding, leaving the two to walk in silence for a while. That is until he decided to wonder who this person's name is. So, what's your name? I'm Ichigo, by the way. Hitomi, she replied. And you already know my last name. So hats with the boxes? Well, as I've already told you before, I don't live in the Hyuga estate anymore. And that day came recently, which I think was 8 days ago. I would go and get my personal belongings, but that would make things suspicious on my part. So I decided to buy new furniture with the money I've been saving. Wow, you really got guts to leave the place without permission, even though you know of the consequences. Say, why did you leave anyways? You ask a lot of questions, you know that. Ichigo embarrassingly chuckled. Oh, sorry. If you don't want to talk about it, I understand. No, it's not that. I don't mind talking about it. She sighed before speaking. It's just that I've really grown tired of how the main house and the branch house view each other. I just couldn't take it anymore. Ichigo sighed to himself as he remembered how some clans are. He knows that if he could, he would change something about this, but this is part of their law. So he can't do anything about it unless he wants to be executed or given a horrible punishment. I see. I don't think it's a good idea for you to leave though. What if your mom or dad, or anyone close to you suddenly notices your disappearance? They'll definitely send a search party for you. Hitomi chuckled at that. Well, to break it to you, my parents are dead. I have no brothers or sisters. Hayashi, who I view as a step-uncle, has been distant from me for a few years. So I can say with confidence that he's forgotten about me. His daughters, Hinata and Hanabi, are occupied most of the time. So I hardly see the two anymore. So I doubt that they will remember me anytime soon. Wow, You've become really isolated lately. I can't imagine how that feels when you receive it from family. At first it hurts. I felt really depressed, and that's when I slowly stopped seeing people in the clan. Then after a while, I thought about leaving. So I did. I bought some stuff, then I ran into you. And you know the rest. A few more seconds later, they came up to an apartment complex. Alright, it's just up there. She gestured towards the second floor of the building. When the two reached the front door, Ichigo opened the door before setting the boxes down on the kitchen counter. There we go, one delivery of housing materials for a fine lady like yourself. Hitomi giggled at his words. Why, thank you, kind sir, she replied. Now if you'll excuse me, I have some unpacking to take care of. Ichigo nodded before heading towards the door. It was a pleasure knowing you, Hitomi. You as well, if you ever want to hang out you know where to find me, she replied. He smiled before closing the door and heading back down the stairs into the streets. Now what? He thought to himself. Sleep, the hollow suggested. He replied as he headed back towards his living quarters. I'm still a bit sleepy anyways. 11:40 p.m. Itachi's POV. It's now nighttime in Konoha. There's a full moon tonight on this quiet time. On a roof, Itachi sat gazing at the hundreds of lights that shine throughout the village. He gazed up at the moon for a split second before nodding to himself. The time to act is now. With that, he vanished from the roof, only to appear in front of the Uchiha estate. As he made his way towards the front, he took notice of two guards that were stationed there speaking to one another just to pass the time. The two noticed a lone figure making its way towards them, which made them tense up for a second. When they saw that it was only Itachi, their muscles eased themselves in relief. One of the guards began to speak with a small smile. Hey Itachi, you were gone for a while. How you been? He was silenced by a kunai implanting itself in his throat. He gurgled a bit before falling over dead, leaving his partner to stand in shock. The other guard snapped out of his shock before pulling out a kunai. Itachi, what are you doing? Itachi glanced at the other guard from the corner of his eye before drawing his sword. Taking orders. He spoke in a cold tone, sending shivers up the guard's spine. With that he engaged the last guard and easily beheaded him. He looked down to see his clothing covered in blood of his own people. That made his stomach twist in disgust. He felt that he was about to vomit any second now, but he pulled himself together and focused back to the sole reason he was doing this. With that, he entered the compound before heading towards the nearest house. When he reached the doorstep, he let a small tear slowly fall since it wouldn't stay inside him. When he entered, he placed his emotionless expression on once more. A few seconds later, Itachi came out of the building with his weapons and clothing bloodier than ever. There was so much blood everywhere, on the floors, the walls, the bed. This was the first time he took a life of a young one that had no chance of defending himself. The worst thing about it is that he couldn't stop himself. He kept going through every house, ending a life of another that had an innocent heart, that had no part of what was going on, but he had to do it. It was either that or watch his little brother be treated as tool for that man's personal interest. His feet came to a stop in front of another house, his house. The place he's remembered growing up since he was just a little innocent boy. But now, the only thing that stood in that spot was a monster. A monster that can never hope to receive forgiveness anymore. His legs slightly shook at the thought of going in, but he has to. In order to keep Sasuke safe, he'll do anything. So he entered. He made sure that no one was wandering around the house awake. After all, I guess it would be better if he didn't hear the pleads and screams of someone you love dearly. After checking every room quietly, he noted that everyone is asleep. Thank Kami for that. Now it came for him to move into his parents' room. Every step he took towards the door, he could feel his heart beating louder and louder. He grasped the doorknob before slowly opening it, allowing the dark room to be viewed upon him. He stood by the door for a second, allowing his vision to get used to the darkness before heading inside. His attention caught sight of two figures laying motionless on the bed. He could hear the very soft breathing of his two parents as they slept without any worry of being attacked. He made his way up to his father's side of the bed before gazing down at the man in front of him. His Mangekyo Sharingan blazing brightly as he glared in hate at the man in front of him. The person who made his life a living hell, all because of some arrogant view that an Uchiha wasn't a Hokage. Just for planning a way to get one of their own on the seat by force, he was forced to eliminate his clan from the orders of that man, after he figured out his father's plan. He couldn't feel anything but hate for him anymore. His eyes caught sight of a picture of his family smiling happily in the camera, all except for his father, who stood with an annoyed expression. He didn't like that one bit. He grabbed hold of the image before tearing out the part his father was in, leaving the three smiling Uchiha family to themselves. He stuffed the image in his pocket as the last and only moment his family will ever be happy. Because after tonight, Konoha will never be the same. He found himself turning back towards his father, who slightly stirred before settling once more. He grasped his sword tightly as his mind began to flash through all the times he was truly happy with what he has. His grasp on the hilt of the sword became so tight that he began to shake in anger. That shaking made his weapon rattle and click, which made some unwanted noise to be heard at this time of night. Fugaku began to slowly wake up when the sound of clicking bothered his hearing. As his vision fully cleared, he saw his own son swinging his swords down upon him. And he knew by the force that he was swinging it, that this was no joke. He tried to move out of the way, but to no avail. It struck him in the shoulder, making him yell in pain. This sudden noise caused Mikoto to jump out of her bed in fright. She looked over to her husband only to widen her eyes in horror at her eldest child stabbing him through his shoulder. "Itachi!" she yelled in fear as she scrambled to her feet and backed up towards the wall. Her hand placed over her mouth as she was left in a state of shock and confusion. "What are you doing?" Itachi gave her mother no attention as he kept his gaze on his father. He knew that if he looks at her, he would completely shut down then and there. His body would be sapped of all its energy with one look of his mother's disappointed, fearful eyes. So he took the easier way. He grabbed his father by the shoulder where his wound was and threw him against the wall. He didn't let up there, he kept on beating him. All while hearing his mother's pleading cries to stop. That's when he couldn't tell who he was anymore. He couldn't even recognize who these blood-covered hands, or who this body belonged to anymore. Who was he? Where was that Itachi everyone knew in heart? Gone. The next thing he realized doing was impaling his father through the heart as he watched his eyes slowly die out. How his heart lifted after seeing that, knowing that the cause of everything is now gone. But that was soon replaced by another. "Itachi ni?" Itachi's eyes widened at the voice. He slowly turned his gaze towards the door to see Sasuke with a look of horror and confusion. "What are you doing to Tsu-san?" Sasuke asked as he couldn't get his eyes to look at his mother, who was screaming at him to run. "Sasuke," Itachi spoke as he let Fugaku's body fall to the ground. He took one step towards his little brother, only to see him take a step back. That one move shattered him. Knowing that Sasuke could and would never see him for who he is, who he was, ever again. He gazed at the floor, fighting back tears that tried to burst out. After knowing that he had himself under control, he gazed back up to Sasuke, replacing his expression into his cold and emotionless version once more. "Sasuke, listen to me," he spoke, his tone freezing his brother in place. "I don't have much time left, so listen well." He inwardly sighed to himself before speaking. "Hate me, despise my very existence. And when you know you've grown strong enough, come find me, and end this miserable life of mine." With that, he said one word that made Sasuke fall to the floor unconscious. "Tsukuyami." When Mikoto saw that Sasuke fell to the floor motionless, she feared the worst. "Sasuke!" she yelled as she ran towards him and picked him up. She then proceeded to run out of her room, trying to find the exit in the darkness of the house. It seemed impossible for her, since every corner she took she saw a shadowed figure of Itachi standing there. The only way she could tell it was him was because of the blazing red eyes that glared into her very core. After a few seconds of running through this endless maze she thought she was running in, she made it towards the front door and exited it. Thank God it was open when she saw it, because she probably would have been caught if she had to open it. She was about to get off her porch, but she misplaced a step, and that caused her to sprain an ankle. She tumbled to the ground in pain, but she didn't give up there. Mikoto began to crawl away, but having to drag herself and Sasuke across the ground proved to be useless as Itachi stood above her. "Itachi," she whimpered. "Why are you doing this?" Itachi stood for a second before raising his weapon. "I don't know," he muttered before bringing it down. Mikoto closed her eyes, waiting for the feeling of fear to stop along with her body. However, as she heard something block Itachi's strike, that caused her to open her eyes and wonder who her savior was. a few minutes after the start of the massacre. Hiruzen stood gazing out the window of the Hokage's tower. He couldn't get this feeling that something bad was going to happen tonight. The feeling wouldn't stay away from him. Not to mention, when he called Itachi in for something important, he noticed that he acted rather strange. The way he tried to hide what he was feeling, the times he caught him gazing out the window towards his home. Yeah, something was up. His thoughts were interrupted as he heard the door open, allowing 3 of his best shinobi to walk in. But in a sort of grumpy, exhausted way. This better be good, Gigi. Ichigo yawned as he rubbed his eyes. Yugao nodded in agreement with her captain. Yeah, I only slept for a few minutes already until one of your guards informed me that you wanted to see us. Kakashi jumped on a couch in the room as he lay in a sleeping position. So what's this about? Hiruzen sighed before speaking. We're here to talk about your friend and teammate Uchiha Itachi. He turned his gaze from the window before going to sit down on his office chair facing the 3. Tell me, has he been acting strange recently? Yugao nodded after a few seconds. Now that you say it, I did notice that he's been acting rather strange. I agree. Kakashi spoke. He seemed rather depressed when I saw him. Same here. Ichigo replied before adding on to the question. When I walked with him to the academy, he seemed fine at first. But I noticed when he said Sasuke's name he seemed sad. Like it was probably the last time he was going to see him. Ichigo thought about what he just said for a second. You don't think that something's going on with the Uchiha clan? Do you? Hiruzen shook his head. I have no idea, but we can't let this go unexamined. I want you, Ichigo, to go with Kakashi and Yugao to investigate what's actually going on here. I'll be joining you guys with some reinforcements. I have a feeling something's going to happen that would affect the village as a whole. The 3 nodded as they vanished from the Hokage's tower, heading straight for the Uchiha estate. When they appeared in front of the gates, they expected someone to be standing there on lookout. But seeing 2 dead Uchihas really placed them on guard. Someone's breaking and entering. Ichigo spoke as he knelt down inspecting the 2 dead corpses in front of him. And he or she is quite skilled. I want a full investigation within 30 yards of Uchiha estate. Nothing gets in or out without us knowing. And if you can, try to find survivors and bring them back towards the main entrance. Let's move! With that, the 3 vanished from sight searching for the culprit that dared do something like this to their village. Oh, they're going to get a long, painful interrogation. Ichigo will make sure of that. He entered a building searching around for a bit, trying to find any sort of small object that will give them a clue on where their criminal is. He made his way towards the kitchen to find the couple of this building drenched in their own blood. Their bodies slumped over a chair as their heads rested on the table. May you 2 find peace in the next life, for this one would not provide such a request. Ichigo muttered, paying his respects. He heard very faint whimpering coming from his right. He drew Zangetsu from his back before making his way over towards the sound. It was coming from a closet. He placed his hand on the doorknob before yanking the door hard. It flew open as he got into a defensive stance, but he eased himself seeing that it was a little girl. An injured and frightened little girl. Hey buddy. Ichigo spoke as he sheathed his sword. He got on his knees trying to make himself seem as friendly and welcoming as possible. Come here, it's alright now. The monster's gone. The little girl stayed still for a second before throwing herself on Ichigo. Her body shaking harder than Ichigo could ever thought possible. It's okay. He slightly moved her back and forth, trying to soothe her. She's in a state of shock. He thought to himself. She'll be fine, Zangetsu spoke. After a while, she'll slowly regain her normal self. But that will take a while. But her usual personality will never be the same as it used to be. You should bring her back towards the entrance, King. She needs that wound on her shoulder checked out ASAP, the Hollow suggested. Yeah, already on it. He replied as he stood up, carrying the little girl bridal style. If he could guess how old she is, he would probably say 2 or 3 years of age. Come one little one. I'll take you somewhere nice and safe. With that, Ichigo vanished and reappeared at the entrance, only to greet his other 2 teammates who were tending to some other children. We got a wounded here. He spoke. Yeah, here as well. Yugao replied as she bandaged up a little boy's arm. This is terrible. For these kids to go through such a thing at such a young age. Yeah. Kakashi replied with a nod. Hopefully Hokage-sama will get here soon with some medics. No kidding. Ichigo muttered. So, you guys find anything? So far, no. My section seems pretty tight. Made sure nothing slipped my eyes when I patrolled around the area. Kakashi confirmed. Same here. Nothing found besides this kid. Looks like whoever did this had a heart to spare a few children. So far we only got 3. 2 girls, 1 boy. Kakashi replied. Ichigo sighed before he stared at the little girl who was still in his arms. You'll be fine here. He spoke with a reassuring smile. All of the comforting ended when they heard a scream coming off from a distance. You guys heard that, or was that just me? Kakashi asked. No, I heard that. Ichigo narrowed his eyes. Which means our culprit is still near here. He turned towards Yugao before speaking. Yugao, you stay here and protect the children. If you see anyone you don't know, I don't care who it is. You cut them down before they get near the children. Yugao nodded in understanding before she gathered the kids close to each other. Kakashi. Ichigo spoke. On me. Right behind you, buddy. Kakashi replied as he followed his leader on the rooftops. The two continued on this route for a few seconds before they heard the same scream once more. This time, it was closer, much closer. We're on them. Ichigo spoke as he came to a stop. In the distance he saw Mikoto exiting her house running. She had what he guessed was Sasuke in her arms. But what really confused him was seeing Itachi pursuing the two drenched in blood. He didn't know what was going on. At first he thought Itachi got into a fight with the criminal to protect his family. However, such thoughts were dissipated when he saw him swing his sword on his own mother. Shit. He cursed as he appeared in a flash in front of Itachi, blocking the strike that was meant to end Mikoto's life. Itachi, he growled. What the hell is the meaning of this? Itachi stayed still, his head trying to find an answer for this situation. How did you know? He spoke. It doesn't matter how the I know. What I want to know is why. Ichigo yelled as he pushed him back. Kakashi now, he yelled. Kakashi appeared behind Itachi with a Chidori blazing palm. He's not trying to kill him, just tried to subdue him from trying anything that would cause more trouble. Itachi instantly substituted with a log, successfully dodging the blow that would have probably left him defenseless. Damn. Kakashi spoke as he took his place next to Ichigo. What now? Ichigo sighed as looked at Mikoto, who was staring at the two in shock. Her mind not knowing which side to pick. Take Mikoto and Sasuke and get out of here, he ordered as he turned his gaze back towards Itachi, who was standing a few yards away from them. But... just do it, Kakashi, Ichigo growled. You know I can take Itachi by myself. We'll speak of this another time. But for now just shut your trap and do as I say. Kakashi sighed before nodding. Yeah, sure. He made his way over towards the two breathing Uchihas before picking up Mikoto bridal style and had Sasuke wrap his hands around his neck. Make sure you get back in one piece. He spoke before muttering. Oh yeah, try to bring Itachi back. He then vanished from the area. Ichigo stabbed Zangetsu on the ground before he began to approach Itachi. So he crossed his arms as he now stood inches away from him. Why'd you do it? Itachi turned his gaze towards the ground before speaking. I can't say he was cut off as he felt a fist hit his face. Ichigo grabbed him by the collar of his shirt. Why? Did you do it? Every word he spoke began to groan louder. I can't say, Itachi yelled. They're watching, he muttered. Who's watching? Itachi responded with silence as he stood motionless. Ichigo's patience wore off as he brought his fist back and punched him in the gut hard, sending him crashing towards the house. Who's watching? He roared. Why can't you just tell me, damn it? Each question he yelled began to grow more desperate for answers. Why are you doing this? Who made you do this? Tell me, Itachi. I can help you clear your name. He began to pace back and forth, clenching his fist in anger. I can help you. All I ask is that you cooperate with me. Itachi came out of the building as he clutched his gut in pain. Hee, if only it were that easy. He spoke. Easy? Ichigo questioned. Open your eyes, Itachi. Nothing is easy in this world. It's all ate up the moment we were born in it. Just constant wars and fights to be the best. I wish it could go back to the way things were, Ichigo. I really do. And there you go again. It can go back. All I need is an explanation on why this is happening, Itachi. Why you did this? You're the one who holds all of the answers right now. All you need to do is tell me. Your friend, right? I'm your friend? You say that it can go back? Then tell me, Ichigo. How the hell am I supposed to face my mother now? After everything I've done to her this very night. You think she's going to look at me with the same caring eyes she gave me the day I was born? No. She's not. Oh, and how about Sasuke? I killed his father in front of his very eyes. He saw it. He saw everything. How is this going to be the same again? 2. Yeah, you don't know. He spoke with a knowing answer. It was nice knowing you, Ichigo. Really, it was. But now we must go our separate ways. Don't speak about me to Sasuke, alright? That's all I ask. With that, he turned and began to walk away from him before Konoha would put this place on lockdown. Ichigo clenched his fist as he stared at the retreating figure of Itachi. One of the best friends he made since high school. He would be damned if he let him just walk away as if none of this ever mattered in the first place. Where do you think you're going? He spoke as he began to chase him. If you're not going to talk, then I'll beat the answers out of you. He raised his fist, intending to knock out Itachi in the back of the head. When his fist made contact, the figure of Itachi dissipated in a cloud of smoke, much to Ichigo's shock. Shit! He thought to himself as he began to search his surroundings. Zangetsu, see if you can pinpoint Itachi's location. Zangetsu complied with his request and began to search for any similar energies that will match Itachi's, but to no avail. There was nothing. I'm sorry, Ichigo, but he's gone. Looks like that clone of his bought him enough time to escape. No. Ichigo thought as he fell to his knees. Why do the closet people get taken away from me? He yelled as his emotions began to crumble like how he remembered feeling 5 years ago. Why? What did I do? You'll get him back, Ichigo, Zangetsu reassured. But for now, we must leave him be. Come on, let's see how Mikoto and Sasuke are doing. Ichigo stayed on his knees for a while before he slowly stood up. He made his way over towards his sword before picking it up and readjusting it on his back. With that, he flashed away, back towards the entrance of the estate. When he appeared, he noticed that Hiruzen finally arrived with 20 extra shinobi. 5 of them seemed to be medics. Hiruzen noticed Ichigo the moment he began to approach them. Ichigo, I've been wondering where you were. Kakashi told me that you were taking care of something, and that I should ask you in person. Ichigo passed Hiruzen without so much as a glance. He placed his back against the wall before slowly letting himself slide down to the floor. Judging by the way you're acting, it's not good, is it? He shook his head, confirming Hiruzen's thoughts. Itachi is gone. Hiruzen sighed as he dropped his head in sympathy. I'm sorry for your loss. No, you got it wrong. He's still alive. It's just, it was so surreal. Headed this GG. He did all of this, he took the life of almost every person in his bloodline. He was about to kill his mother for Kami's sake. His mother! The worst part was that he never bothered to trust us, he just kept it to himself the entire time. To think someone made him do this. Yugao, who was listening the entire time nearby along with Kakashi, couldn't believe what she was hearing. No, he wouldn't allow someone to tell him to do this. Itachi's strong, I know that he would have killed the guy that tried to make him do this. Kakashi nodded his head. Yeah, I believe Itachi was just trying to protect someone or something. The mastermind behind this must have threatened him that he would destroy the person or thing he loves dearly. Hiruzen hummed at the possible suggestions they came up with. All of these suggestions could be possible. We still have no solid proof for Itachi's innocence. I'm sure he would be placed for execution when word of this reaches the council. For now, I believe it's best that we let him go, unless you guys would like to see his head somewhere other than his body. Ichigo shook his head. As much as I hate to see him go like this, it's for the best right now. I'll get him back the moment we know what's going on. Kakashi raised an eyebrow before speaking. And who said you were doing this alone? Itachi's my responsibility. I let him go before I could understand what he was trying to say. Mirth to Ichigo. If you haven't noticed, we're a team. And no matter what the problem is, we'll get this done as a team in the end, no matter what. Yugao stated. Ichigo stayed silent for a while before chuckling. He stood up facing the two. You guys are the best team a captain could ask for. I'm glad that I got to work with you two for my shinobi career. Yugao smirked as he placed a hand on her hip. That's what a team is for. We'll fight together, and if it happens, we'll die beside one another. What the cat said? Kakashi spoke, pointing at Yugao with his thumb. She playfully punched him in the arm for that. Shut up, we're not wearing our masks tonight. Don't call me by my A and B name. Kakashi chuckled as he rubbed his arm. Yeah, sorry kitty. That comment made Yugao scowl slightly. Alright, you two can flirt with each other later, lovebirds. Ichigo smirked. Yugao slightly blushed in embarrassment. We're not in love. You sure about that? Kakashi teased. Oh, shut up, Kakashi. You know I already have a boyfriend. Yup. Ichigo nodded. His name starts with Kakashi and ends with Ataki. You guys are asses. Yugao pouted as she looked away. The two males began to chuckle as they clutched their stomach, trying to stop themselves from going into a full-blown laughter, but failing in the end. Hiruzen lightly chuckled as he watched the three leave the area. Ah, the energy these young ones possess, he thought. He then turned his attention towards the shinobi he brought with him before ordering them. Alright. I want the remaining 3 survivors to be placed in the hospital for treatment. This place will be on full lockdown until further notice. The shinobi responded with a loud hi, in response as they finished up what they were doing. Somewhere in Konoha. The now 3 ANBU team were walking down the streets in Konoha. I don't feel sleepy anymore after the shit that happened tonight. Kakashi spoke, his hands in his pocket as he gazed ahead of him. Yugao nodded as she replied. I know, right? It's weird how in one moment you're exhausted but later, after a bizarre event, you're just fully aware of your surroundings. Say? Ichigo scratched his head as he kept his eyes ahead. You guys want to get a drink or something? It'll be on me. Kakashi and Yugao looked at each other before shrugging. Kakashi nodded as he spoke. Sure, we got nothing better to do anyways. Yugao agreed with her white-haired friend. I don't mind. But just stop me from drinking too much so I won't get a hangover. Great. He turned around smirking as he faced the two. Because this will be our last drink until we get Itachi back. And when we do, we'll have ourselves a giant celebration. The two smirked as they nodded at the suggestion Ichigo made. After all, this team doesn't feel complete without a certain Uchiha having a blast with them. It just won't be the same as they remembered it. What they don't know is that there's a long road ahead of them, and that their loyalty for their friend will be tested. Can these 3 bring back their friend, or will that bridge that connects the 4 be destroyed the moment they know who's he allied with? Who knows? We'll see in due time. It's been 7 years since the Uchiha massacre took place, well, almost 7 years. And during this time, he got to meet a new person which he began to enjoy the company of. Even if he's the only one that can see her. Yes, I said only one that can see her. Ichigo stood in the middle of a training ground as he meditated, getting himself more aware and open to the world around him. He let the sounds of nature envelop his hearing, the dripping sounds of wet leaves falling into puddles below, the chirping of the early birds that sang around him, the rustling of the leaves that smacked against one another, the howling of the wind that picks up every few minutes, and the sound of feet sprinting towards him. 8 feet. He opened his eyes and turned to the direction the sound was coming from, only to be tackled to the ground by a small girlish figure. Ichigo! The girl yelled as he held the orange-haired man tightly around her arms. Ichigo lay in shock for a split second, completely taken off guard from the tackling hug he received from the girl. Mavis. His breath was slightly heavy as his heart was racing. Don't do that again, you startled me for a second. Moo, okay, she pouted as she got off of him, allowing Ichigo to go back into a sitting position. So why are you here? He questioned as he began to stand up. Mavis fell on her back as she began to kick her legs up in the air. I got bored scaring the villagers. And I want to talk to someone. And since you're the only person that can see and hear me not? Ichigo chuckled to himself at that. I guess that's pretty reasonable, right? After all, a dead girl will get pretty lonely if no one will be able to talk to her. I still don't really understand why you won't pass on to the afterlife. He spoke. Mavis stopped her kicking before turning towards Ichigo. I guess it's because I'm not ready yet? Or I just don't want to go. She smirked a cat-like expression. Ichigo scoffed at that before smiling. He still remembered the time he met Mavis. That day was worth every second of it in order for him to meet her. Flashback 1 year ago. Ichigo wandered around the outskirts of Konohagakure. It's been another boring day with nothing really important to do. And he'll be damned if he let himself wander the village aimlessly the entire day. He thought of visiting Hitomi again, seeing if they could hang out. But when he reached her front door, he saw a note sticking on it saying, "Out for the day, I'll be home by midnight." That led him to wandering outside the gates. After seeing that there was literally nothing to do in the village, he decided to do some outdoor exploring and see how different this world's nature is from his home world. He continued to walk, that is until he saw her. A lone figure sitting on a tree branch staring past a small lake in front of her with a waterfall attached to the other side. She looked small, really small actually. Like Rukia's height, probably an inch taller or so. But she was small for a fact. He saw that she wore a small white dress, with long flowing yellow blonde hair that literally looked as if it reaches her feet. Her face was pretty cute if he says so himself, but trust me, he's no pedophile. Ichigo grew curious on why a little girl was out here all on her own. After all, it's pretty dangerous out here if you're not careful on where you go. "Oi kid!" he called out as he made his way up towards the girl. This sudden action startled her from her spot. She turned back towards Ichigo before looking around her, trying to find the person he was talking to. "What's a girl like you doing out here all alone?" He spoke as he now stood under the branch the girl was on. "Where are your parents?" The girl seemed shocked since her eyes widening by the second. "Hey, are you talking to me?" she asked. Ichigo raised an eyebrow in confusion from the girl's question. "Of course I'm talking to you. There's no one else here. What's your name?" "Mavis." She spoke. Her voice was beginning to fill in hope. "You can actually see me?" Ichigo sighed, thinking that she was just playing a game with him. A game that he really doesn't want to play right now. "Of course I can see you. What do you think you are, some spooky ghost or spirit?" She gave no reply as her head dropped, her hair shadowing over her eyes. She soon began to sniff, as tears began to fill her eyes. Ichigo was surprised at this, and now felt bad, thinking that he probably took this a bit too far. "Hey, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." He was cut off when he saw her jump off the tree right on him. Ichigo caught her, but that catch made him take a few steps back in order to keep his balance. She's pretty light, yet heavy on impact, he thought as he watched her cry in his chest. A few minutes passed until it was finally over. Ichigo looked down at Mavis once more to see that she was now eyeing him intensely. "What?" "I can touch you," she replied. "Of course you can touch me, we're alive." "And no, it's not that." Mavis sighed. "It's just how do I say this?" "It's alright." Ichigo smiled. "You don't have to explain it to me. Just a simple word or two." Mavis sighed as she looked away. "I'm dead." "You're what?" Ichigo asked, raising an eyebrow. "If you're dead, then why aren't you in the afterlife already?" Mavis turned towards Ichigo, a puzzled expression over her face. "You believe me? Well, if what you say is true, then you're technically not the first spirit I ever met." "Wait, there are others?" Her voice began to fill with hope. "Yeah, well, not anymore since they're all pretty much gone. I haven't talked to them in a long time. But that's not the point here." Ichigo shook his head to get rid of such thoughts. "If you're dead, then all we need to do is to allow you to feel as if you have no more regrets in this world, so that your mind can finally rest." He clapped his hands together. "So, what do you regret doing, or what did you always wanted to do but never could?" Mavis placed a finger on her chin before shrugging. "No idea," she straightly spoke. "Well, great," he thought. "Can't you just use Kanso on her?" the Hollow suggested. "Great idea! But oh wait, I forgot. We're in an alternate universe here, so if I use that on her, then there's no telling where she'll end up." Ichigo thought sarcastically. "Hey, I'm just trying to help. No need to get all over my business," he replied with his hands up. Ichigo chuckled before turning his attention back to Mavis, who was still thinking. "You know what, never mind about that. We'll figure that out in the future." He began to walk away from Mavis. After a few steps he began to notice that she was trailing behind him. "Why are you following me?" "Why not?" Mavis replied. "You're the only person that can see and talk to me. So might as well stick with you." Ichigo said nothing as he turned his attention in front of him. Sure, kid. I'm not a kid. Mavis pouted. You sure about that? Because you do look like a child to me. I'll have you know that I'm 21 years old. She corrected before speaking softly. Well, that was the last known age I received before I died. Ichigo heard this, but said nothing, for he felt that it wasn't his place to be speaking about this stuff to her right now. After all, they just met about half an hour ago. A few minutes of walking later, Mavis began to whine about walking too much. Can we stop now? It hasn't been 15 minutes yet. But I was walking all day today, she replied. Ichigo sighed before turning to her. I'm not stopping. He spoke before getting on one knee. So I'll give you a ride while we're at it. Yay! Mavis yelled as she hopped on his shoulders. I'm a big girl now. She spoke with a cute smirk. Yes, you are Mavis. By the way, what's your name? You haven't told me throughout our entire conversation. Kurosaki Ichigo, he replied. It's nice to meet you, Ichigo. Mavis smiled, causing him to smile as well. Likewise. Flashback end. Yup, after a year of growing comfortable from each other's presence, they became like a tag team. It really helped also knowing that Mavis was an excellent tactician. In fact, she was so good that he thought that she had the Nara clan's genes inside of her. His thoughts of her broke away when he felt a presence appear not too far from him. He turned to see one of the old man's bodyguards standing there. Hokage-sama wishes to speak with you. Ichigo nodded before replying. Tell him I'll be there in a few minutes. With that, he watched as the shinobi bowed in understanding before he shined away. He then turned his gaze towards Mavis before speaking. Well, you'll want to come with me to visit the old man? Mavis nodded before leading the way, walking in a happy way, as if nothing in the world's going wrong. Let's go, Ichigo. She spoke. Yeah? Ichigo spoke as he followed. I'm coming, midget. She turned around, blushing at the name he loves to call her. I'm not a midget. I'm just really tiny. She pouted as she poked her fingers, causing Ichigo to chuckle. At the Hokage Tower, Ichigo made his way up towards the door that led into the old man's office with Mavis now trailing behind him. He knocked on it twice before entering. Gigi, I heard you wanted to see me. He faced the old man who sat across the room, but he noticed that there was other people in as well. 2 men and 1 female with very large melons. Ichigo. Hiruzen spoke with a smile. Just in time. I was just about to mention you. He gestured towards the seat. Come sit, we have much to talk about. Ichigo nodded, accepting his request as he sat down on one of the empty chairs the Hokage had placed earlier. So, what do you need me for? Hiruzen sat straight as he had his fingers entwined against one another. Before I get to that, I would like to introduce you to our guest. He gestured towards the 3 people. Ichigo, this is Terumi Mei. And these 2 young men are her bodyguards Ao and Chojuro. Mei stared at Ichigo before waving. Nice to meet you, Strawberry-kun. She smirked before thinking to herself. He's quite the looker, I wonder if he's single. Ichigo felt a sharp pain on his back when he heard that. Damn. It's been so long since someone's called me that, now I have someone calling me that name again, great. He thought while his left eye twitched a bit. Nice to meet you, Mei. He smiled before turning towards her bodyguards. You too as well. Ao and Chojuro only nodded, showing that they meant the same way. Mavis, however, stared at Mei's breast with annoyance. She stared long and hard at it before looking down on her flat chest as she poked it. What are you doing? Ichigo thought as he saw this happen right in the middle of the room. Good thing no one else could see it, because it could end up making an entirely different conversation he has no intentions in getting into. He shook his head to get rid of such thoughts before giving his attention back towards Hiruzen. Ichigo. Hiruzen spoke in a way that showed Ichigo he was serious. Mei here is a rebel leader, leading an army against their Mizukage for the tyranny he's done to his village. I would lend a hand to help them with the war, but I'm afraid that we're still recovering over the sudden incident that happened 12 years ago. So I can't afford to send any of our forces since that would make us more vulnerable than we already are. Ichigo nodded at his explanation, understanding the hard decisions he has to make. But he also couldn't help but feel slightly worried. Okay. He spoke. And what do you have in mind that involves my presence here? Hiruzen sat back in his chair before speaking. I want you to go with Mei and assist them in this war in any way you can provide. Sending you in there is like sending about 100 to 300 of my men to battle. Are you sure about this, Hokage-sama? Mei asked. With all due respect, I don't think that one man will be enough. I'd rather leave here empty-handed than to risk one of your men. Hiruzen gave a reassuring smile towards the rebel leader. It's fine, Mei. Ichigo here is one of my best, if not the best shinobi I have in my ranks. He can take care of himself. He turned towards Ichigo. Right, Ichigo? Ichigo hesitantly nodded before speaking. If you don't mind me asking, how long will I be away? About half a year, if everything goes out smoothly, that is. However, if the war isn't finished by then, we will be asking for you to return. He nodded again in understanding before he mentally cursed. Damn, I won't be here for Naruto's graduation. Kushina won't be happy about this. He thought about the red-haired mother and her thoughts about this. If he could say so himself, he would think that Kushina would be mostly disappointed out of all. Over the past 7 years, he could see that she's been getting quite clingy on him. She likes you. The hollow smirked as he had both of his hands covering his mouth. What are you talking about? Ichigo mentally replied. She lost her husband for Kami's sake. Zangetsu jumped in the conversation. That may be true, Ichigo. But it's been 12 years since that incident happened. She'll no doubt look for a new partner in life if she feels like it. And so far from the hints I've caught, she's definitely looking for a new partner, and it seems you caught her eyes. Ichigo stuttered something that he wasn't able to completely speak. He was blushing madly at the thought of what he just heard. Him and Kushina? No way, impossible. Besides, what would Naruto think of that? If Naruto came home one day only to be announced that his mother and his thought-to-be brother in blood got together. Yeah, that would take time to get used to if ever at all. Mavis, who noticed this, couldn't help but climb and sit on Ichigo's lap as she snapped her fingers in front of his face. Ichigo? Are you there? When she received no reply, she pouted before making puppy eyes. Moo, pay attention to me, Ichigo. She whined. Ichigo couldn't help but snap out of his thoughts when his eyes fell on Mavis. So cute. He thought as he began to pet her hair, causing her to give a cat-like smirk in success. Ichigo? Hiruzen spoke, noticing how he seemed like he was petting something. What are you doing? Ichigo noticed what he was doing before he chuckled in embarrassment. Nothing. I guess I was just Okay then. Hiruzen replied. Anything you would like to see done before your departure? Ichigo shook his head. No, it's alright. Alright then. He turned his attention to Mei. I leave him in your care from now until you guys succeed in your revolution, or until his time serving you is over. Mei nodded as she stood up before bowing in respect. Thank you, Hokage-sama. She spoke before turning towards Ichigo. We leave by sunrise tomorrow at the gate. She received a nod from Ichigo in understanding before she and her 2 bodyguards left the office. If you don't mind, I'll be heading home to pack up. Ichigo spoke before exiting the door, not bothering to wait for an answer. Back home. Are you sure you have to leave? Kushina whined. Yes, I'm afraid so. Ichigo sighed in defeat as he searched for items he'll be taking on his long journey away. But you'll miss Naruto's graduation if you go, she replied, trying to find any excuse that would make him stay. I know. And as much as I hate to leave on a mission for something important as that, it must be done. He looked towards Kushina before smiling. Don't worry, I'll make it up to him, as well as you. Before she could reply, Mikoto made her appearance when she exited her room. What's all this commotion about? She spoke with curiosity. And why does it sound like you're leaving Ichigo? Ichigo sighed before replying. That's because I am. I'll be out for half a year, that is. When he saw Mikoto, he couldn't help but remember the moment she first moved in with them after Uchiha massacre occurred. Flashback 7 years ago. It's been a few months since the Uchiha massacre took place. Ichigo just came back from an A-ranked mission that was meant to take out a few drug dealers down by the borders of Land of Fire. He approached the front door where he lived with Kushina and her son, Naruto, before opening it. I'm home, he called out. Kushina peeked her head out of the kitchen before smiling. Ichigo. It's been a while. She spoke. Yes, it has. So how's it been? Oh, nothing new, I was just doing. Kushina? A voice sounded from her room. Who's that? As soon as those words were finished, Mikoto looked over at the door before smiling. Oh, it's just you, Ichigo. Mikoto? He raised an eyebrow, not expecting to have guessed over when he just returned. What are you doing here? Mikoto turned towards Kushina with a confused expression. You didn't tell him? Tell me what? Kushina chuckled as she scratched her head nervously. Hey, well you see. When you were gone for the week, I invited Mikoto to stay with us for as long as she needed since she didn't want to go back to her home after you know. Ichigo took a few seconds to think before sighing. Alright then, not like I don't mind you having friends to stay over. After all, this is your house and you can use it however you wish. But next time please notify me before it happens so I know what to expect when I get home. Kushina inwardly sighed seeing that he didn't have any objections towards her decision. Alright. She nodded. Sorry for not telling you earlier. It's alright, he replied before facing Mikoto. So, how are you, Mikoto? I haven't spoke with you in quite a while. I've been doing quite fine, thank you for your concern. And Sasuke? How is he taking this so far? Mikoto sadly sighed as she thought about her only remaining child she had with her. I'm not sure, he's been acting so cruel and distant to everyone, myself included. I don't know what to do with him anymore. I can talk to him, try and see if he can open up to me. After all, he likes my presence mostly after Itachi left the village. Thank you, that would mean a lot to me, she replied, a hopeful smile presenting itself to him. Ichigo nodded before speaking. So, when are the two coming home? They should be arriving in a few minutes. Kushina spoke. The academy should be over about now, after all. I see, he replied before taking a seat on an empty chair. So what's for dinner? It smells pretty good in here. Just some curry with chopped potatoes, meat, cabbage, and carrots, Mikoto replied. Mind if I help? Sure. Mikoto pointed towards the cabinet. Can you take out the necessary silverware, as well as 5 bowls and set them on the table? Already on it. He smiled. A few minutes later, the front door opened allowing 2 familiar children to walk in. We're home, Naruto called out. Ichigo made himself known as he exited the kitchen. Just in time, dinner is ready. Nii-san! Naruto yelled in excitement at seeing Ichigo once more after a week. He rushed up to Ichigo before throwing himself upon him. Ichigo stumbled back a bit before chuckling. Alright. I missed you too, Naruto. He then directed his attention towards Sasuke. I've heard that you and your mother will be living with us from now on. He smiled. It's nice to see you again, Sasuke. If you need anything, just come find me. Sasuke nodded after a few seconds before heading into the kitchen where he knew his mother was at, all while having a gloomy aura surrounding him. Naruto saw this and couldn't help but remember a question he always wanted an answer for. Say, Nii-san? Naruto looked up at Ichigo. Do you know why Sasuke seems so sad? He's been like this ever since he returned to the academy after a few months of his absence. Ichigo ruffled Naruto's hair a bit. Yeah, but it's not my place to talk about it. He glanced down at Naruto before continuing. But Naruto, if you see that he's acting weird in any way, if he looks like he's going to do something that'll harm someone, come find me. And I'll take care of everything. Naruto stayed motionless for a few seconds before nodding. I promise. He spoke, making Ichigo smile. Alright, now let's go eat, shall we? He made his way towards the kitchen, Naruto right on his heels. However, before he can reach it, he heard a plate smash against the ground, followed by 2 surprised shrieks. He rushed in before speaking. Are you guys alright? However, the sight that greeted him made his blood boil. In front of him, Mikoto stood drenched in hot water that looked like it stung, but she seemed to be on the verge of tears. I'm sorry, she whispered in pain. What happened here? Ichigo spoke. He turned towards Kushina, who stood still, completely surprised by the scene she just witnessed. He then turned towards Sasuke, who seemed like he had a very annoyed and angry expression. Don't mention him again, he growled. Sasuke. Ichigo spoke with narrowed eyes as his scowl formed. He walked up to him before placing a hand on his shoulder. We need to talk. The two then disappeared in a flash, leaving Kushina to comfort her friend as well as the mess they'll have to clean up. On the Hokage monument. The two appeared once more, standing high above the village they were in just seconds ago. What's up with you? Ichigo spoke. What did Makoto do to get you all riled up like that? Sasuke glanced the other way, not liking the situation he was in right now. You wouldn't understand. Try me, Sasuke. Because I have a lot of secrets myself I still haven't told a soul about. Sasuke clenched his fists before speaking. Why, he growled. Why did he do it? Those words he last spoke to me before two passed out. He killed our entire clan. Our family. And for what? His eyes twitched in anger. I'm gonna kill him. Ichigo stared into Sasuke's angry eyes before he sighed, thinking to himself. Sorry, Itachi, but I can't allow your brother to go down this path of darkness. He scratched his cheek before speaking. You mean Itachi, right? Don't say his name. Sasuke hissed at the thought of him. No, Sasuke. You need to know why he did this, or why I think he did this. He crouched till he reached eye level with the young Uchiha. When I arrived with my team at your estate, I encountered Itachi. And I believe he never wanted to do what he did. Sasuke turned his body to face him with a glare, yet a confused expression added. What are you talking about? Don't talk. He cut off, placing a finger over his lips. Just listen. Itachi seemed really afraid, or something like that. In fact, we actually do believe that he's innocent. His eyes gave it away. When I spoke to him, I asked him why he was doing this. His reply was, I can't say, they're watching. He then spoke about how nothing will be the same after the things he's done. I came with a conclusion that he was trying to protect something, or someone. Who then? Sasuke jumped in the moment Ichigo paused. After all the new intel he received, he wanted answers for them. If Itachi really is innocent, then why did he run? He wants to know every last speck of information he can get his hands on. What was he trying to protect? Who made him do this? I need to know. And you will get your answers. But in the meantime, we're left in a maze we still need to solve in order to figure out what's really going on. I don't know who set him up to this, but when we find him, he'll be locked up and tortured for the rest of his miserable life. I promise. He stood up, now looking down at the little figure that was Sasuke. But before that, I believe you owe an apology to someone who deserves it. Sasuke looked down in shame before nodding. The moment he nodded, Ichigo grabbed his shoulder once more before appearing back in the house, right on time, for the light of the sun would fade in a few minutes. They made their way towards the kitchen to find the three finishing up on cleaning the mess that was recently made. Kushina, Naruto. He spoke, catching their attention. Can I speak to you two for a second? He received a nod from the two as they approached him, while he slightly nudged Sasuke forward. So what you need us for? Kushina asked, only for her and Naruto to be pulled around the corner out of sight from the two Uchihas. Kushina squeaked in surprise at the sudden yank. Hey, why'd you do that for? She was silenced when Ichigo placed a finger on her lips. Shoo, was all he spoke as he slightly peeked around the corner. This action was shortly repeated by the two Uzumakis a few seconds later. The sight that greeted the three was a mother and child hugging each other as they begged for forgiveness. Kushina smiled at the sight before glancing at Ichigo as she thought to herself, You're amazing, Ichigo. I'm so glad I met you. She felt her face getting red before glancing the other way with a hand on her chest. Why do you make me feel this way? Naruto, however, was having his own thoughts. Why is Sasuke crying? He smirked when an idea popped up in his head. Hee, wait until the others hear this. And so the five of them resumed their meal once more, this time with smiles on their faces as they spoke about their day. Not to mention the excited and interested looks the two children gave Ichigo as he spoke about his mission, especially the looks the two mothers were giving him. Flashback end. Ichigo shook his head before paying attention to the two females before him. Ah. Makoto whined, as she also tried to stop him. Are you sure you have to go? Sasuke would be devastated once he hears the news. You're one of the best things that happened to him after Itachi left. Ichigo sighed once more. I know, and I'm sorry for that as well. He finished finding the items he needed as they were tucked away in a small bag. Like I said to Kushina, I'll make it up to you and him as well. He smiled as he stared at the two. To all four of you. In the end, they just gave up and allowed him, hoping that he'll come back safe in one piece. Next morning, The sun was barely seen rising above the horizon as it slowly shined the village for another busy day that lay ahead of them. However, this day was the day our orange-haired companion wouldn't see this village for a few months. Ichigo stayed awake throughout the whole night since he couldn't sleep. His thoughts were deeply set on the mission he'll be getting himself into. This was basically the first time he'll be going to war, not like any of the battles he had back in his world, but a war. Something that is on a completely different level than what he's used to. These thoughts worried him to no end. After all, wars are not to be taken lightly at all, no matter how strong or weak your opponent is. He currently sat in the living room, his right hand on his chin as he couldn't get this feeling to die down. That is until the light flickered on, causing him to turn his head towards the source that turned it on. "Ichigo?" Kushina asked as she rubbed her eyes, trying to take out the drowsiness from within them. "Why are you up so early?" "Nothing really." He gave a reassuring smile. "I guess I was just an early riser today." Kushina nodded as she yawned. Then all of a sudden it hit her realization on what's going to happen today. "So you're leaving, right?" She spoke in disappointment. "Yes," he replied. "I guess so." He stared out the window to see the sun rising. "We leave by sunrise tomorrow at the gate," May's voice repeated through his head. "I have to go now." He stood up before grabbing the small bag he had left next to the door. "Tell everyone I said bye, please." Once he received a nod from her, he opened the door before stepping out into the cool air that was engulfing his skin. The sudden change of heat gave him goosebumps for a second. He was about to shut the door behind him, but before he could, he heard Kushina call out to him once more. "Ichigo." He turned around, wondering what she wanted to say. But instead he felt a pair of slender, smooth arms wrap around him, pulling him into a hug. But what happened next caused him to stiffen up. He felt a pair of lips touch his cheek, leaving him really dumbfounded. "Come back to me as soon as you can." That was all he heard before he heard the door shut on him. Kushina leaned against the front door, her heart pumping faster than she has ever felt before. "I did it," she thought as a small blush formed on her face as she rewinds the memory that happened just a few seconds ago. And it felt good. Back outside. Ichigo continued to stand there, then it hit him that he had somewhere to be. He shook his head as he grabbed the items he had dropped when Kushina kissed his cheek. He turned around, ready to head towards the destination he was supposed to meet May. However, his eyes caught a familiar female blonde spirit grinning at from atop a fence as she had her legs swinging. "So how was it?" Mavis smiled. "I don't know," he replied, shrugging. "Fine, I guess." He then began to walk away with Mavis in tow. Mavis seemed a little disappointed at the simple answer. "That's it?" "What do you mean that's it? It's not like it's going to be some Disney romance movie." "What?" Ichigo sighed as he smacked his head at saying something that made completely no sense in this world. "Nothing," he replied, his eyebrows soon raised as he began to wonder. "Say, why are you following me right now anyway? You do know that I'm leaving for a few months." Mavis skipped in front of Ichigo before she began to walk backwards as she smiled up at him. "That's because I'm going with you, silly." "Oh no." He shook his head. "You're not going anywhere near that war. You're going to stay here where it's safe and drink apple juice." "Stop comparing me to a little girl." She whined. She seemed like she was going to hit him, but that ended up with Ichigo placing a finger on her head, keeping her from arm's reach while she swung her arms everywhere. "Attack of the lolies," he muttered before speaking. "Whether that's true or not, you still look like a kid midget." He smirked. Mavis soon gave up on trying to grab Ichigo. She wrapped her arms to her chest before glancing away with a pout. "Whatever, I'm still coming with you." Ichigo stayed still for a few seconds before sighing. He knew how Mavis was when she gets into a mood like this. She won't give up until she gets what she wants. So in the end, he reluctantly nodded. "Alright, fine. But stay close to me." Mavis smiled at her victory. "Okay," she agreed before adding. "It's not like anyone can see me though." "Yeah, that's true." He nodded as his thoughts wandered on how Mavis can't be seen by anyone but he can. He's not even in his body. I mean, sure, shinobi have Ryatsu mixed in with their physical energy, allowing them to see him. But if they could see him, can't Mavis be seen as well? "You are a mystery, Mavis," he thought as he watched her skip happily. "Hurry up, Ichigo," she called as she waved towards him. Yeah? I'm coming. At the east gate. Ichigo turned the corner that's supposed to allow him to see the east gate. His vision caught sight of Mei and her two bodyguards, Chojuro and Ao, as the three waited patiently for his arrival. Yo! He called out as he raised his arm. Sorry if I'm late. No problem at all, Mei replied with a smile. We just arrived about a minute ago. Well, that's nice to know. He sighed in relief as he stopped not too far from them. Shall we go? Mei nodded in approval. Certainly, I shouldn't keep my men waiting any longer. With that, the 4-5, if you include Mavis, who was riding on Ichigo's shoulders, rushed out of the village heading towards Mizu no Kuni, where the war is currently taking place for control over Kirigakure no Sato and other villages on its territory. Thanks for watching this video. You really enjoy this video. Like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow The Living Myth for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.